Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nollege, a sports podcast where we'll talk NFL, college football, and anything that is most interesting between the two. So, today, in preparation of the season, we're doing Big Ten East win totals, our takes on how we think the seasons are going to go for these 7 teams. And, well, let's just get right into it with the Ohio State Buckeyes up first. Last year's record, 11-2. Ryan Day in his 6th year. We've got for a schedule at Indiana, Youngstown State, Western Kentucky, then huge test at Notre Dame, Maryland, at Purdue, Penn State, at Wisconsin, at Rutgers, Michigan State, Minnesota, and then the grand finale at Michigan. So, James, let's start with you. What's your take on Ohio State this season? You think with a win total of 10.5, you think they're going to go over? You think they'll live up to expectations?
Yeah, I'm personally going to take over here, still, because I think they're going to pick up the win at Notre Dame. Notre Dame hasn't really performed in those big games, and I think they'll play it close, but I don't think they're going to get that. So I think they'll win all of their West matchups, and so that leaves them, they can lose to either Michigan or Penn State. And I think that's very possible, but either way, I think they're going to hit that over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I've got over 2. I mean, let's talk about that game at Notre Dame. At Ohio State was a pretty tough matchup, surprisingly tough, if you ask me, for them last year. So, in away environment, I think anything could happen there. But I think this team is just so good, so talented. It's going to be hard for them to drop 2 games. Hard to imagine. I mean, Charlie, what do you think? Your take on Ohio State?
Well, I have a slight over, and I actually don't think it's that tough. I mean, I have them win the East. Ohio State's just not really a team that goes 10-2. I mean, I think Notre Dame, last year Ohio State's offense, it kind of wasn't really gelled yet. It wasn't really ready. But this year, Notre Dame, I mean, their offense is better. They just won't score enough. So I have Notre Dame as a win. I don't think Wisconsin is going to be as close as people think. And then Michigan and Penn State are both, I can see toss-ups, but they're only going to lose one of those, so that's an over. I mean, key losses, you lost Jackson Smith and Jigma, C.J. Stroud, both starting tackles, which that does hurt a lot. And then key additions, Davison, Igbinoso, and then a trio of really good freshman receivers, although they won't play much. So I still think it's an over. I also think Jim Knowles, the defense, will be much improved from last year, which is their really only weakness last year.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we can talk about, obviously, the elephant in the schedule, you could say, the Michigan game. Ryan Day lost humiliatingly twice. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, really now, this is Ohio State, both the past 2 years, was heavily favored to win the Big Ten, and they lost both times. So now I would say they're really the underdogs there now. It's, can Ryan Day get past Michigan? Is that the question? I mean,
Little bro.
Yeah, they are the little bro now. It's going to be, it's going to be tough at Michigan. I mean, I think that's a big test. I've got Ohio State winning every game except that one, and probably lose now, ended up the season 11-1, and most likely still securing a playoff spot.
I think Michigan's just retained so much from last year that they're not going to get that one.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the only big slip-up. I think unless Penn State really lives up and exceeds all expectations, we could see a challenge there. But
I mean, I think their season's really going to be determined by their QB play. I mean, it's kind of uncertainty, but they've just had a streak of so many good QBs. And it won't be that bad because you could have anyone back there. I mean, they have elite wide receivers.
They'll fill in.
Also, last year, they never 1 week really had very healthy backs. This year, Travion Henderson, Mike Williams, both healthy. So I think that's a big key, too.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to lack for talent. No one's doubting that. The question is just, can Ryan Day lead them there? I mean, he's been, in the past 2 Michigan games, he has been thoroughly outcoached, in my opinion. So, can that carry them over back to the Big Ten championship? We'll see. And now, as we speak of Michigan, let's just move on right to them. Michigan Wolverines, last year's record, 13-1, winning the Big Ten, undefeated regular season, and finally losing to that crazy game at TCU in the playoffs. So with Jim Harbaugh, his 9th year, and we're going through the schedule, we got East Carolina, UNLV, and Bowling Green. Basically 3 scrimmages before the real season starts. Rutgers at Nebraska, at Minnesota, Indiana, at Michigan State, Purdue, at Penn State, at Maryland, and then finally, of course, Ohio State in Michigan Stadium. So, Charlie, what's your take on Michigan?
I mean, I think this is a little boring, but I have another over. I mean, I think the offense will be improved. I mean, running game won't get any better, but QB will be better. Jaden McCurphy, he's obviously a lot more developed. And they don't really lose anyone. I mean, they lose Mozzie Smith, but they have one of the highest returning production. They have 8 returning stars on offense. I mean, that's pretty good. Almost the entire line, except Ulia Timmy, is returning. And they also got Dearness Tossman from Nebraska. I mean, a lot of people don't think he'll do much, but I think he'll be contributing a lot on defense. And, I mean, also, their defense will be good again, so I think it's an over.
Yeah, this is really a no-brainer for me. 10.5, easy over. I don't see this team losing 2 games, especially with their insultingly easy preseason. I mean, it's just, come on, it's a joke. I mean, you've got just East Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green. It's just some of the worst teams. This is just...
Yeah, I think a lot of people have them losing at Penn State. I think that's an interesting game to circle. You know, if we happen to have the trifecta of each big team losing to each other. But I actually think they're going to win that game. So it's a very easy over for me.
Yeah, I mean, you've got everyone returning. I think this team's going undefeated. They're going to the playoff in my mind. And now, really, Michigan are the leaders in the Big Ten. So the Big Ten championship now is complete expectation. So how do they deal with these new expectations in the conference? And now they need to stay focused. Obviously, the complete goal is the playoff. So how do they stay focused, do you think, Charlie, with winning the conference?
Well, I mean, I don't really think it's that hard because, I mean, their main focus isn't winning conference. I mean, in most of their practices, they literally have written on the wall, beat Georgia. So their main focus is now focused on the title. And a lot of people are going to have them losing at Penn State or Ohio State. But I think a really good game to watch is at Maryland. Sandwich game in between. Thinking ahead to Ohio State last year. They're thinking ahead to Ohio State, and they almost slipped up to Illinois. So I think that could be one to watch.
If anything, I don't think we can overlook at Michigan State. I mean, at the end of the day, that's a rivalry game.
It's going to be very heated.
If there's, anything like inclement weather, I think it could turn into a dogfight. I mean,
The fight from last year.
I think they still win, but it's just one to watch.
Yeah, I mean, how do we think J.J. McCarthy is going to evolve?
Yeah, I mean, I think with everything he's got in this schedule, he doesn't have many excuses. So I think he's going to perform just as good as last year, if not better.
I mean, it's so easy. I think for most of the season, they're going to do what they did, which is just stick behind Blake Corum and your really good O-line with your run game. Just basically demolish teams through sheer physicality, play like old school Big Ten football until they finally get to those big games where what I'd really like to see is what they did towards the end of last year at Ohio State is really get McCarthy out, roll him out, open up the passing game, and really evolve into you have both of those threats constantly going at once. I think that's what will get them through the Big Ten and even further into finding actual success in the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, and now moving on, we've got the third of the beasts of the East. Now with Penn State, last year's record 11-2 with a Rose Bowl victory, 10th year for James Franklin here. And going through the schedule, we got West Virginia, Delaware, at Illinois, whiteout game against Iowa, then at Northwestern, UMass, at Ohio State, Indiana, at Maryland, Michigan, Rutgers, and closing out the season, and neutral field at Michigan State in Detroit. So, James, what do you think of Penn State this season with a over-under of 9.5? You think they're going over too?
I mean, I know it sounds like basic because we've had the over on all these so far, but this is the easiest one there is, really. At 9.5, that's a no-brainer. I mean, if it was higher, I think it really should be, and maybe there'd be thought, but there's not 4 losses on the schedule for Penn State, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this, we've got this is a much better Penn State team than last year, and that team went 10-2, just losing the 2, you could say, the big games to Michigan and Ohio State. So I don't think this team will do any worse, definitely. So I've got the over easily. Again, we've got hopefully an improved quarterback, and I mean, with this, it does give us the potential of 3 11-1 teams at top. That would be an interesting scenario. Charlie, what do you think of that?
I mean, like you said, I have an easy over. I have a freeway tied 11-1 at the top of the East. I mean, it sounds kind of boring, but 9.5 is too low. I mean, you lose Parker Washington, Joey Porter Jr., I don't think those hurt at all. You get Dante Cephas, Kalen King will be another lockdown corner. And also, Sean Clifford was never really the guy last year. So Drew Aller, we don't know what to expect, but he is the guy that can actually take them to where they need to be. And also, elite running backs, even better than last year. And O-line, I just think it's easy over.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing, in my mind, this team probably goes 10-2 again. I don't think they quite get to the 11-1. In my mind, we've got James Franklin. An interesting scenario here is that he has a history of really making some interesting decisions in big games that has tended to cost them in the past. So I'm wondering, with the expectations being so high for Penn State this year, can James Franklin really take the next step and get them to like an 11-1, a 12-0, a Big Ten title playoff season? I mean, are they really that good enough to take that next step? What do you think, Charlie?
I mean, I'm really high on them this year. I mean, some people are kind of boring, gonna say, I think it's another 10-2 year and losing to the two big boys. But I have them pulling a shocker at Ohio State. I mean, I don't think Michigan's a good matchup for them. I think Michigan will run all over them, and J.J. McCarthy's going to break out the play actions. But I think they get down to Ohio State and have a three-way tie atop the East.
Interesting. That'd be such a fun, crazy scenario. I'd love that to happen.
Personally, I don't think this is their year for that. I mean, like I said, it's an easy over, and I think they'll probably sit at 10-2. But I just don't think, after what happened with Michigan last year, I don't know if they're going to compete with these big teams for the Big Ten East.
It's tough because Michigan, and especially Michigan and Ohio State, as always, are just going to be so good as well. So in a year where though they were having more of a quote-unquote down year, then I could see really Penn State really going for it, but I don't know if, just because of outside factors, if they're going to be able to do it. I mean, the only other game on their schedule that could be a tough challenge is that game against Iowa. I mean,
yeah, it's likely they're both undefeated going into that game, so it could be a big matchup, and who knows what would happen.
Yeah, I mean, you could maybe say at Illinois, too. It could be...
Big noon, orange out.
Yeah, a bit of a challenge, but Illinois has no atmosphere in their stadium, so I'm not too worried of the away game there.
I mean, I also think this is the year because their 2022 recruiting class, one of the best of all time. I mean, a lot of them didn't really play much, but now this is the year to actually get some reps in. This is the year to actually get more developed.
Yeah, could be. All right, and let's move on to the Michigan State Spartans. Last year's record, a disappointing 5-7. Mel Tucker, his fourth year, and is now one of the highest paid head coaches in college football. So let's see if he can produce results according to that paycheck. So we got a ton of talent lost. I mean, you got 6 returning offensive starters, 7 on defense. And going through your schedule, Central Michigan, Richmond, Washington, Maryland, then at Iowa, at Rutgers, Michigan, at Minnesota, Nebraska, at Ohio State, at Indiana, and then with the neutral field game at Penn State. You have an over-under of 4.5. So, James, what's your take on this? You think Michigan State is as bad as this win total says they're going to be?
I don't think they're going to hit that. You know, I think they're going to go over. They'll overperform a little. Possibly, you know, best case scenario, I say they make a bowl. But I think with this schedule, there's a few wins that are borderline that I think they really could win if they get things together. And so I think that's a over for me for sure.
Nice. What do you think? Charlie, your take?
Man, I do not like this at all, but I'm going to go very slight over. I mean, you lose Payne Ford, you lose Keon Coleman, Jaden Reed, those are our top weapons. I mean, I don't think Noah Kim, he's very unproven, and he doesn't really have much talent. And looking at it, I mean, Washington's going to cook them. Their secondary is going to be bad again. And then, obviously, the Big Three, those are all losses. And you're going to lose a lot of games, but, I mean, 4.5 is just too low. And, you know, running back's going to be good. Running back's always good for them so far under Mel Tucker. But I did not like this. But I'm going to go very, very slight over.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you there. I think this team's probably going to go 5-7. You look at the schedule, you got Central Michigan, Richmond, Rutgers, Indiana. I'd say that's probably 4 safe wins right there. So all you have to do then is pick up a win against, let's say, Maryland or Nebraska, or maybe, I don't know, you get lucky against Washington or at Iowa. We'll see. But, I mean, Mel Tucker, they need to start producing some results according to this. They're losing a lot of key players, which is understandable. I know they have a huge exodus of talent, but you really, with your paycheck, you got to be doing more than this. And I think after the season, you're going to see some people wondering if this is the direction their program really wants to move in. But as I said, they'll be really bad. They're not going to be 4-8 bad. So we'll see how it works out for them.
I mean, Mel is getting paid about $3 million to win.
Yeah, I know, no kidding. Now, moving on to a team whose fortunes will hopefully be much better. We have Maryland, which coach Mike Loxley's 5th year here last year was a pretty good 8-5. I mean, you have 5 returning offensive starters and 6 on defense. And going through the schedule, we got Townsend, Charlotte, Virginia, then at Michigan State, Indiana, at Ohio State, Illinois, at Northwestern, Penn State, at Nebraska, Michigan, and then at Rutgers. So, Charlie, what do you think of Maryland this year?
I'm gonna have to go under. I mean, they're gaining a lot of momentum in the East, but I think this is the year they go back down. The East is too stacked. They lose Deontay Banks, key additions, Tyrese Chambers, right receiver. I think he'll be pretty good. Marcus Dumerville. And then, I mean, the defense, it did not look good, especially in the spring game. Running backs did not look good. They also lose 4 out of 5 O-linemen, so that'll be worse. I mean, they're gaining a lot of momentum in the East back-to-back 8 and 5 years. But I think this year the momentum goes down. They go 6-6.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going over with this one. I feel pretty good on Maryland this year. I think they're gonna really, they're not gonna, like I said, they're not gonna be world beaters. They're not gonna threaten the 3 big East teams in any way. But they're just going to be solid. They're going to have a solid season with a solid bowl game. I mean, you look at, I only see really losses to Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, obviously, and then maybe Illinois, let's say, and end up the season as a nice 8-4.
Well, I just don't like the over because, I mean, to go over, they have to go 8-4. I mean, they're losing to the big 3, and it's tough for them to only lose 1 the rest of the way.
I don't think they're going to get the win at Nebraska near the end of the season. And I think Illinois is another close one that could be lost. Same with even at Sparty. So I'm going to hit the under here, you know.
Yeah.
I just don't think they have it in them this year. Obviously, Taulia, he's an experienced starter, but I don't think he's going to bring them to where they need to be.
I mean, I think Michigan State, Illinois, Nebraska, even out Rutgers are all toss-ups. They have to go 3-1 in all those. I don't think that's very likely.
You think? I mean, what do we think of Tolly? You think,
I mean, he just hasn't gotten much better over the years. I mean, every year people saying this could be his breakout year, but he doesn't get much better.
Well, I think he's good, but at the end of the day, with the rest of the team around him, is that good enough to be one of the top teams in the East and win all these?
They'll easily be the best team not named Penn State, Michigan, or Ohio State in this division.
There's a big drop-off.
Oh, there's a big drop-off after that, as we'll get to. And moving on to that drop-off, let's talk about Rutgers with over under 4 and matches their last season's record of 4-8. This is Greg Schiano's 4th year back at Rutgers, and we have on our schedule Northwestern, Temple, Virginia Tech, then at Michigan, Wagner, at Wisconsin, Michigan State, at Indiana, Ohio State, and then at Iowa, Penn State, Maryland. So that's a really tough way to close the season. I mean, Charlie, you think this is Rutgers' year to get anything going?
They're not getting anything going. I have a push, but, I mean, I will go very slight under. Look at that schedule. Northwestern's win. Temple's win. Temple's probably win. And Wagner's win. But I cannot see another 2 wins on the schedule. And it's more likely to go 3-9, I'd say, than 5-7. I mean, you lose Aaron Cruikshank, a lot of wide receivers. You lose Adam Korzak, your dude at punter. I mean, he kind of carried the team. They don't get any new additions. And also, young QB, Gavin Wimsatt, he's really young. He has not played very much. Things unproven. You lose, your top 3 wide receivers. It does not look good. The only bright side is that defense looks slightly improved.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, this schedule's just brutal. I mean, look at this way they're closing the season. Ohio State, at Iowa, at Penn State, Maryland.
4 L's.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got, I mean, really your only easier games, Indiana, Northwestern, Temple, maybe, depends on how Virginia Tech is in Wagner. So if they go 5 for 5 in those games that they really have a chance of winning, then they can do it. So I think the perfect thing would just be a push here right at 4 wins. However, more confident on them getting 3, honestly. I mean, it's just not happening with the schedule, James, you think?
Yeah, I only see 3 wins here, personally. I think they got tough draws for the whole rest of the season. Tough away games. Their home games aren't exactly the ones that other than like Northwestern. And I don't see them getting a 4th that's solid. So I'm going under.
Man, that's going to be an ugly game. Sunday morning, Northwestern, Rutgers.
It'll be beautiful.
That is not going to be a good one.
And I mean, even look at their other games. When they play Wisconsin and Michigan State, both Wisconsin and Michigan State are coming off bye weeks when they play them. They're going to be ready. They're going to be I don't think they'll have a chance in either of those. And so it's just, honestly, you feel bad because they just don't even really have much of a chance on this schedule. I mean, even with all the good that Greg Schiano's done in the past few years there, it's going to be really hard to get anything out. And now we've saved the best for last. Let's move on to the Indiana Hoosiers. Last year's record was 4-8 and 2-7 in the Big Ten. Tom Allen's 7th year. Going through a schedule, again, a pretty tough one where we have Ohio State to kick off the season, Indiana State, Louisville, Akron, at Maryland. Then with your bye week going at Michigan afterward, Rutgers, at Penn State, Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan State, at Purdue. So my take here, going at Michigan, Rutgers, at Penn State, Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan State, Purdue, they're going to lose every single one of those games to close out the season. So in my mind, they're not winning a game after the start of October. I mean, this is not... No, I've got their over-under total is 4.5, and this is an easy under for me. I mean, I don't see them winning really more than 3 games, if you ask me. This is going to be just a brutal year. So, Charlie, what do you think of Indiana?
I mean, this is too easy for me. Also, under. I mean, they have no QB depth. Their depth. I mean, Taven Jackson starting a redshirt freshman, that is not good. Key losses, Deshaun McCoy, AJ Barner, I don't know how I'm going to say this, Co Nofanga Tototo, and key additions, Trey Liana out of East Mississippi Community College, D-line, so he'll help. But passing is going to be a big struggle. I mean, it is just not looking good for the Hoosiers.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, it's just going to be brutal for them, I think.
You look at it, and there's probably 3 guaranteed wins, and I think they could hit 4.
3 is a stretch.
Pull off an upset win, maybe like something crazy at Purdue, but like there's no way they're going to go over and get 5, so it's an easy one.
I only have them with 1 guaranteed win. I mean, last year they lost, what was it? They lost to like Western Kentucky, so I don't think Akron's a guaranteed win, if anything. I think their only guaranteed win is Indiana State, so this is an easy under.
I think, and let's talk about it, it's safe to say at this point the 2020 COVID season was really a fluke. You had a ton of really teams that were normally never really good that year being good, and so I think at the end of the season you're going to have some real big questions. Tom Allen's seat is going to be scorching hot. If he's not gone by that point already, I'm seeing them going 2-10 and moving in a new direction. I mean, what do you think, Tom?
I mean, it's really sad because he was such a great feel-good story in 2020. I mean, they're the best year ever. Now 2-10, 4-8, and I have them going 3-9 this year, so that is not good.
Yeah, you think there's any hope for Tom Allen?
I think it's going to be over for him. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Also, defense. Defense is a big problem, but they lose. I mean, their linebackers are going to be worse, and defense, it's going to get worse. Mm-hmm. It is going to get worse.
Yeah. All right, next up, we're going to head to the more interesting storylines, in my opinion, with the Big Ten West. All right, let's continue with the Big Ten West, which always gets a bunch of hate, but this year, things are going to be really interesting, I think. You got a bunch of new coaches and some high expectations, some low expectations. I think from top to bottom, this is going to be a really decent conference division with a lot of fun to watch. So let's start with one of the biggest storylines, Wisconsin. Luke Fickell coming over here. Interesting culture change, shifting into the air raid offense. And so last year they went 7-6, and now their schedule this year, they got Buffalo, at Washington State, Georgia Southern, at Purdue, Rutgers, Iowa, at Illinois, Ohio State, at Indiana, Northwestern, Nebraska, and Minnesota to close it out. So, Charlie, what do you think of Wisconsin this year? With an over-under of 8.5, you think they'll meet expectations?
I mean, I think that's kind of unpopular opinion because I see so many people saying Wisconsin is my surprise team. I have a very slight under. I mean, it's an unexperienced team. They have not played all together. They lose Nick Herbig, John Torchio. I mean, Nick Herbig kind of hurts. And then they get Tanner Mordecai, C.J. Williams from USC, Darian Varner, Temple. I mean, I think Tanner Mordecai, he's a gunslinger, but he did not look good in the spring game. And there's just too many slip-ups on the schedule. I have a slight under.
Yeah, I think I agree with some of those slip-ups. I'm going to take the under here, too. With them going 7-6 last year, I don't see them getting 9 wins and turning it around, winning the Big Ten West so quick this year. I think some of those fringe games, like at Minnesota or at Washington State, I could easily see them lose those. So I really don't.
They lost Washington State last year.
Exactly.
So.
So.
I mean, I just think I'm going to call it the dairy raid. I just think it's going to be weird because their whole identity's always been running. It's going to be weird.
It's going to be a weird fit. I don't know if that's going to work. I've got the under here. I mean, I think 8-4, 7-5 is a whole lot more likely than 9-3. That's reaching pretty high.
Okay, but one thing I did see that stands out, they have a crazy number of returning starters. 10 returning starters on offense. That's got to be one of the highest. Also 8 on defense.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's really going to make...
Well, I think they'll...
I mean,
when you have a new coach coming in, I mean, that makes...
That just stood out to me.
Trying to shift all the culture. I mean, it's going to be a lot. And, I mean, you have Ohio State, Indiana, and... Rutgers from the other teams from the East, those should be gimmies. Not really going to be any challenge, but I still think they'll challenge for the Big Ten West. Probably end up 8-4, end up playing against Iowa that game later on in the year, basically as the Big Ten West title game. So I think they'll be decent and really to set the stage for more to come in the future. I think there's going to be some rough periods of adjustment. It's a huge culture shift.
They do.
So we'll see what happens. And now let's move on to the centerpiece of this discussion, Iowa here. And we're all Iowa fans here, so we're all horribly biased, but
Facts.
deal with it. Under here is 8.5, and I'm going way over. I think people are really sleeping on Iowa this year just because they were such a joke last year. I mean, it was humiliating, frankly. But even, consider this. Even with the dead last offense in the country, all the jokes, terrible scoring, Iowa still won 8 games with a very difficult schedule and the worst offense in the country. So how are they going to do this year with a much more favorable schedule and what is presumably going to be with Cade McNamara coming in and overhauling the offense, bringing them at least back to just decency. If they can get back to even being decent on offense, I think they win 9-10 games easily. Charlie, what do you think?
I mean, this is an easy over. This is one of my locks. I mean, I could be biased. This is easy. I mean, you lose Jack Campbell, Lucas Van Ness, Riley Moss, but none of those matter because Phil has been proven to be that guy on defense. He's been proven to carry. Get Cade McNamara, Eric All, Seth Anderson, Cale Brown. Cale Brown is their highest wide receiver recruit ever at Iowa. So, I mean, they finally have some dudes for Purdue. I mean, you already know defense, special team. I mean, they're obviously elite. But I actually think I got the offense scoring about 30 points a game this year.
Yeah, I mean, well, with scoring points per game, that is really a bad thing to deal with. It's just going to be a hassle to have. It was dumb to ever put that in the contract. It's going to be a storyline all season. People are going to be watching that, and it's just going to be distraction. So, no doubts about defense, special teams will be fantastic. Phil Parker knows what he's doing and should not be doubted in any way. And really, with the easy schedule, and you have Cade McNamara coming in, the expectation from Iowa is a Big Ten West title this year. So they're going to strive completely towards that. I'm thinking 10-2, probably around that. Maybe slip-ups against Penn State, Wisconsin, or Illinois somewhere down the line. Minnesota even, since they're coming off a bye week. But, I mean, this is really going to be, I think, a really just solid team that's going to really surprise a lot of people.
I'm not near as enthusiastic as you guys. Being an Iowa fan, I know we're going to lose at least one game that we shouldn't. But it's still at 8.5. I have to take it over here. I would probably have them sitting at 9 wins. So
I'm just looking forward to playing Ohio State and Indy. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. I mean, Cade McNamara, what they're going to do is, what they did last year was, since Petrus couldn't throw a completion ever, he just wasn't capable of it, they would just not respect the pass in any way and load up every defender against the run, and then when Iowa would have to rely on the run because Petrus could not complete a forward pass, they would just run straight into a wall of defenders. So now with McNamara, they'll be able to really open up the passing game and should really pose a threat down the field, so teams will have to respect that. They can't load up against the run, which should in turn improve Iowa's run game. Their O-line was crap last year. Now they'll be experienced crap, so they should be slightly better.
Going on defense, I always hear people say like, "Well, the O-line is the real problem," but they bring out, what do I say? They return 5 out of 5 starters in the O-line.
But is that a good thing?
Okay, I think they're going to be better, though. I think they're going to be better. I got that feeling.
That feeling, yeah.
I mean, I just think they're going to be better, bro. And they also got Caleb Johnson.
Caleb Johnson's great, yeah.
Yeah, top 5 backs in Big Ten, probably top 4, top 3. So they're going to have to respect the run game, too.
I want to say that game, Iowa State in Ames this year, is looking a lot easier now that Iowa State is likely to have many of their starters probably suspended with the betting. And Iowa, obviously, is under a lot of this investigation right now, too, with many players. But as of right now, no impactful
no
starters.
Big names, really, yeah.
I mean, some people who transferred away, so it shouldn't really hurt Iowa too much. But Iowa State's looking like an even softer opponent this year, especially with that being one of their losses last year at home.
Yeah, some of those key dropped passes and fumbles by Arlen Bruce last year look a little suspicious now, don't they?
Yeah.
But, I mean, a key game on the schedule, I see September 23rd at Penn State Whiteout. Let's talk about that. That's going to be both teams you would think would probably be undefeated heading in. Going to be a huge matchup. Big first test for both of them to see how the rest of the season is going to come out. You think Iowa has any chance going
I think if there's a team that can go into Whiteout and win, I actually do think Iowa is one of those teams. I'm not saying it will happen, but I really do think that's one that's possible, you know, a lot more than any other of the big three almost. So I think that's one to watch. I could definitely see him winning there.
Yeah, I mean, Penn State and Iowa, they've really, if you look at, they've had a pretty good rivalry of sorts going the past couple of years. I mean, you have, last game was obviously top 5 matchup,
It's
awesome.
going to be a really toxic environment there in the whiteout for sure. Iowa was, all the Penn State fans were hating a lot on the injuries and there was a lot of hate going between the teams last year. So I'm sure this year it'll be even more.
I mean, I don't think Iowa's a great chance to win, but I do think Iowa's a pretty good matchup against Penn State. But I think their biggest game to watch is at Wisconsin. I mean, that's another obvious one, but it will kind of decide the Big Ten West.
Yeah, I mean, it should be that game. It typically always is. And so long as Iowa can get through without losing to someone they shouldn't, without losing to a Michigan State or a Minnesota or a Purdue, as long as they can't just avoid any dumb errors, they should really be fine, I think, safe with at least 9 wins. I think 8 wins is the floor, really. So we'll see how it works out. So let's move on to Minnesota with an over-under of 7. And this is PJ Fleck here, is 7th year already in Minnesota, wow. And looking through the schedule, you got Nebraska, Eastern Michigan, at North Carolina, at Northwestern, Louisiana, then heading over, playing in Minnesota, Michigan, at Iowa, Michigan State, Illinois, at Purdue, at Ohio State, and closing out the season, of course, against Wisconsin. So, James, what do you think of Minnesota this year? You think they're going to be better? Last year they won 9 games, 9-4.
I'm not really living with Minnesota this season. It's kind of a hotter take, but I would take the under with 7, which, I mean, considering they went 9-4 last season, wouldn't think, but really with non-con at North Carolina does not help their case at all, I think. And there's a lot of other tough games in there. So I'm going to take the under here. I wasn't real impressed with what they did last year. Not that they were bad, but I just don't see them going over here.
I mean, yeah, I also have an under. And I'm not super confident about it, but I have a slight under. I mean, you lose Tanner Morgan. That's the biggest. I mean, he'd been there 12 years, so it's always tough to lose him. You lose both backs. They had pretty good backs. And you lose Mariana Marin, their number 1 tackle on defense. But you do get Sean Tyler and Corey Crooms from Western Michigan. I mean, PJ Fleck, he just cannot stop rating Western Michigan. But it's too young of a team. I mean, they're not, the Greek rifle at QB. It's just I don't really think they're ready yet. I think they're a little too young. Maybe next year, but I don't think this is their year.
I'm going over here. I really think, I mean, you look at PJ Fleck's track record and just it's been consistently great. I'm going to put my faith in this time and see it'll probably work out. I mean, really, ideally, I'd just go with a push, right? At 7-5 wins, I think, is most likely. I know you lose a lot of talent and the schedule's tough, but I mean, this is one of those ones I kind of have a just pretty good feeling. I think Minnesota's, they've really been doing pretty solid the past couple of years. I don't think they're going to drop down to 6-6. That'd be a pretty big drop in quality from the past few seasons. So
well, I mean, they just lost all from last year. I mean, what was his name? Mohamed Ibrahim and what's his name? Tanner Mordecai have kind of been the hurt of the team. And looking at the schedule, at North Carolina, at Ohio State, Michigan, at Iowa, I think those are all safe L's. Wisconsin's probably an L. So then they have to they have to win out the rest of the game. So I just don't think it's happening.
yeah, well, we'll see. And let's move on to a team who definitely probably won't get to 6 wins. At Purdue, we have the over-under set right at 5. And, I mean, their schedule here is just, it's absurdly difficult, really. I mean, you got Fresno State, at Virginia Tech, Syracuse, who was solid last year, improving, Wisconsin, Illinois, at Iowa, Ohio State, at Nebraska, at Michigan, Minnesota, at Northwestern, and Indiana. So you get, I mean, Northwestern, Indiana close the season at least. Maybe that'll be easy, but outside of those two, I mean, I'm going under here. Outside Northwestern, Indiana, I don't see another guaranteed win on this schedule.
I mean, yeah, this is one of my best locks, but I have it heavy under. I mean, I think they're gonna be straight trash this year. I mean, you lose Jeff Brom passing, that was kind of their whole identity. Aiden O'Connell, Chuck Sizzle, Hudson Card, it's an all right, but I don't think defense minded Ryan Walters. I don't think it's a good fit for them. I mean, Jeff Brom in like the air raid, that was kind of, it worked good for them.
I don't know. I feel like it's a good fit for the Big Ten West, a defensive-minded coach.
Purdue just doesn't really seem like a defense team.
But I just think you got your first year, you got a lot of talent loss, and you got this schedule. It's just, I mean, they could very well go 0-3 non-conference too. I mean, it's gonna be rough. James, what do you think? I mean,
I honestly, I thought about the over on this one, but really with those first 3 games in the schedule, I think there's a possibility if they're really good, they could win those 3, and then the last 2 with Northwestern and Indiana. But that would mean even they would have to be flawless with all that, and then also pick up a win against Wisconsin, Iowa, Michigan, Ohio State, or at Nebraska. If they had Nebraska at home, maybe. But with what they've lost on offense, I don't see them getting 6 wins.
I mean, I feel like I'm absolutely disrespecting Purdue, but I think Freenot is very likely looking at this. I think they could go 1-8, starting their first 9 games.
I don't. Yeah.
Because I'll give them the close W. Fresno State, at Virginia Tech, Lane Stadium is tough. Syracuse L, Wisconsin L, Illinois L, at Iowa L, Ohio State L, and then at Nebraska and at Michigan. I think they could lose both of those.
I don't think they have a single safe game till at Northwestern November 18th. So it's gonna be rough for them this season.
I think you're overlooking Virginia Tech and Syracuse. I mean, I think Purdue has a solid chance of winning those games. I mean, they're not locks.
Syracuse is
I mean, they lost to Syracuse last year, and they were a much better team last year.
Game. Yeah.
I think they're going to
I think compared to their conference games, I think those 2 are a lot more winnable. So I would watch that. But it's still an under. Sitting at 5, it's not going to happen.
Such an easy under.
Yeah,
it's too easy.
I mean, yeah. If there was one lock, I think that'd be about the biggest one. Really, there's no way they're getting to 5 wins. All right, now let's move on to Nebraska. Of course, last year had Scott Frost get fired, and an abysmal 4-8 for those Nebraska fans. Now if I'm not mistaken, the Power 5 team with the longest bowl drought currently. I mean, that's a pretty big shift for those fans. They've just gotten used to being horrible now. Now you got Matt Rule coming in. hopefully providing, culture change, a boost, and it's really, it's going to be a rebuild. So first we got at Minnesota, then at Colorado, reinvigorating that old Big 12 rivalry, Northern Illinois, Louisiana Tech, Michigan, at Illinois, Northwestern, Purdue, at Michigan State, Maryland, at Wisconsin, and finally closing out the season on Black Friday against Iowa. So Nebraska's over-under here is right at 6. They're thinking they go right to a bowl game. James, what do you think of Nebraska this season?
So, here in Iowa, there's a lot of Nebraska fans. I know a lot of people personally are Nebraska fans.
A lot of Nebraska hate.
And it reminds me a lot of Texas, where every year this is our year. We're going to be better finally. We're going to make a bowl. I hear that. I've heard that probably like 4 straight years.
That's bad when they've adjusted their expectations.
Will they be better this year? Probably. But are they going to get to 7 wins? No. So I'm taking the under here. Like, I just think this is too tough for them to quickly get it together again.
Yeah, I was slight under. I think it's closer than what James thought, but just Matt Rule, his system takes a couple years. He went 2-10 at Temple's first year and 1-11 at Baylor's first year. That is not too good. And you lose Casey Thompson, Trey Palmer, Garrett Nelson, all those hurt. I think Jeff Sims, he'll be decent. Billy Camp's also a good transfer. But I just think it's disappointing. Nebraska, their expectations of Matt Rule, they've kind of tempered them down a little bit, but they're still going to get disappointed because they're thinking this is a bowl year.
I got the over here. Well, ideally I'd do a push, but for the sake of this, I'm doing it over. So I think, looking at the schedule, it's not brutal. You get Michigan from the East, but outside that, Maryland and Michigan State really are both very beatable teams for this Nebraska team. And really, I think a lot of the thing was just Scott Frost, frankly, just was not coaching this team very well. I think that with the amount of just talent they have is there for them to achieve great results. They just weren't able to take that next step with coaching. So I think you have Matt Rule coming in. He has got pretty proven track record. Yes, he started off rough at Temple and Baylor, but those were very, very different scenarios, especially Baylor. Was a whole mess he came into after that. So I think really they're going to provide a ton of positive momentum, probably get to 6-6, maybe even 7-5, go to a bowl game for the first time in a long time, long time, and finally get that positive momentum and get their fans to start becoming fanatics again.
So I want to hear, what are your 6 wins on this schedule, ideally?
So you got the easy wins. You got Northern Illinois, Louisiana Tech, Northwestern, Purdue, Michigan State, Maryland is Maryland's a toss-up, Minnesota's a toss-up, Colorado is a probable win, but I'll rate it as a toss-up for now. And then you never know what'll happen with, Iowa or Wisconsin can always, Iowa especially, it's a rivalry game. They can always screw up like they did last year, even though Iowa was the better team. So I think they can do a lot with this schedule here. It's not brutal. There's a lot they can get going.
I was tempted to take the over for the Husker Bros, but it's just not happening this year.
I don't think they win at Sparty. I could see a loss with Purdue. Likely a win. And you're right, though. Iowa, at home this year is big.
Especially the fact that it's at the end of the season, I think means a lot, which you don't consider. They'll have the entire season to build up momentum.
If they're playing for bowl eligibility.
Imagine if they get to the Iowa game and they're right at 5-6 or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
That could make all the difference.
Also the Iowa games have been kind of pretty heated and close. 2018, 2019,
both
game-winning field goals.
Fight, yeah.
2020 was a crazy game. 2021, I was at that game. That was one of the craziest games I've ever seen at the end there. And 2022 was just, Nebraska came out there and won pretty easy, so.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. We'll see how they do. Now, let's move on to the Illinois Illini, going off a really great 8-5 season last year. Brett Bielema coming back in his 3rd year really has done a lot, in my opinion, for the program, their culture. So you've got Toledo at Kansas, Penn State, FAU, at Purdue, Nebraska, at Maryland, Wisconsin, at Minnesota, Indiana, at Iowa, and then closing out the season with Northwestern. So, Charlie, what do you think of Indiana this year? You think this is their time to shine?
I mean, I have an over. I think there's much better QB play. I mean, Luke Altmaier is a big upgrade. It's tough losing in the Spoon and Sidney Brown on defense. I mean, those are, for poverty franchises like Illinois, those are kind of generational guys.
They got some D-line talent returning.
Yeah, they do have one of the best D-lines in the Big Ten. But, I mean, secondary won't be quite as good, but QB play and just offense in general, it'll overcome the step back on defense. And they also have very easy East draws. They have Penn State at home, and they don't play Ohio State or Michigan. So that's pretty easy.
It's very favorable. Yeah. I don't know. James,
that was my notes for this one. I think they have some very good draws with, Wisconsin at home, on Nebraska at home. And so I'm going to stick with the over here. I think they're a team that really impressed me last year. So I think they're going to keep it together.
Yeah, with an over-under of 6.5, this is a no-brainer for me. This is way over. I think even they're getting to the point. I think they're going to challenge Iowa and Wisconsin for the West title this year. I think it's going to be between those three teams.
Agreed.
I think Illinois stands a good chance.
They really should have had the West last year, and they kind of screwed it up. So they're gonna compete, I think.
Yeah, you got to look at the schedule here. This is not bad at all. They were really with the amount of returning talent they have, especially like we were talking about that D line. This is really, I think, going to be a big year for them. If Iowa doesn't win the West, I think Illinois does, honestly.
Penn State at home, orange out, big noon. Drew.
Well, I don't know.
That's
no whiteout. Let's not get carried away there.
Bro, Drew Allards, his first road start ever. That would be pretty crazy if they pulled that game off.
Yeah, that'd be a big shocker to everyone, including Illinois. It would be a shocker too.
I also think they'll just disrespect Kansas.
People say Kansas they're Kansas, but
they're still Kansas.
Yeah, they're Kansas. All right, and now let's close out with last and most depressing at Northwestern with a over/under of 3.5. Pat Fitzgerald is no longer here. Along with the recent drama, it's just really thrown a wrench into all their plans for the season and just made a big mess of everything in their program, as if it wasn't bad enough already. They went 1-11 last year, going winless in the U.S. So you're starting off the season at Rutgers, then you go against UTEP, at Duke, Minnesota, Penn State, Howard, at Nebraska, Maryland, against Iowa in Wrigley Field, and then at Wisconsin, Purdue, and then closing out the season at Illinois. James, what do you think of Northwestern this season? You think it's going to be as bad as last year?
I think you're going to call me crazy, but I want to take the over here.
Yeah.
I had under written down in my notes, but I really something about this Northwestern team. I think they can hit 4 wins. Going 1-11 last year is just
you can't do much worse, at least.
Awful. There's pretty much no reason here, but I think something about it. I think they'll beat Howard. UTEP is a little closer. At Rutgers, first game of the season is a possibility. Duke's probably lost, but could you count on them maybe winning someone other random game? Maryland? This is all a stretch. An over is not ideal here, but I want to stick with it.
Not trying to be disrespectful, James, but I just think that's stupid. There's no way around it. That's just a bad take.
That's what I said, but
this feels like cheating. It's too easy. 3.5. This is my number one lock of any win total. It just feels like cheating. The only win I think I have is Howard. UTEP could be a win, but there's just so many distractions. You also lose Evan Holm, Malik Washington. Those are your top 2 offense playmakers, and there's just so many distractions, and none of the team was going to be buying in. So I think 2-10, 1-11. Either of those very likely.
They have eight returning starters on defense. I don't. They're not going to be good, but there's possibility. I think.
Yeah, in my mind,
it's a hot take for sure, but
my mind, there's no freaking way this team gets to 4 wins. Yeah. It's with all the drama they've had, just only accentuates everything that was already going against their favor. Look, I think 2-10, 3-9, 3-9 probably they could maybe crawl to, and honestly, heck, it's an improvement upon last year, but with everything, it's a mess, their whole situation. I don't know what they're going to do about it. It's a...
I mean, I might be a little too low on them. I think 0-12 is more likely than 4-8.
Oh, God.
1-11 is very likely. I mean, there's going to be a lot
They're
of...
not that
Yeah,
bad.
0-12 is not going.
I mean, there's going to be a lot of pressure this offseason for the Big Ten to delete them.
No,
Delete
they're
that.
not. The
They're
Big Ten would not
They're
do
too
that.
smart academically.
What would it be,
They're
2-22
bringing
the last 2 years?
They're no in the Northwestern's been pretty solid under Patch Fitzgerald, which now that he's no longer there, we'll see how they continue into the next era, and if they are really able to do anything, really devote more to athletics, or if they're going to just fall by the wayside completely.
I mean, it's never good losing your winningest coach of all time, and it just doesn't make any sense how they fired him, because they didn't clean house. They didn't fire anyone else. They just fired him.
They really needed to clean house, I think.
A lot of the coaches,
Did you see the recent, news with, they were wearing, cats?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I mean, a
That's
lot of the
against the
coaches
world.
still agree with him, so
I mean,
you can't just fire one guy.
Locker room culture, it's not going to change just by getting rid of the coach, and if anything, it'll make things worse. So that is definitely a striking problem there.
Yeah, how did they even go 1-11 last year? How were they that bad?
Hey, they're undefeated in
worse?
other countries. Okay.
For real.
True.
Man, they're just trash.
All right, that'll do it for this episode. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll be back presumably next week to cover some SEC win totals, and we'll see where we go from there.